One of the Russian Navy's 3 Slava-Class cruisers is waiting in the Black Sea to support the imminent attack against Odessa. The Slava-Class cruisers have a deadly twin 130 mm gun that can shell Odessa in preparation for an amphibious landing. The Moskva, a Slava-Class missile cruiser, was reportedly the ship involved in the Snake Island incident, in which a handful of defiant Ukrainian border guards cursed the Moskva and were later taken prisoner by Russia. The Slava-Class cruisers are stout vessels that can dominate Ukraine's coastal cities on the Black Sea and lead a potential attack from against Odessa. Slava-Class serve as Russian flagships. In addition to the Moskva, there are 2 other Slava-Class cruisers, Marshal Ustinov and the Varyag. The Slava-Class is comprised of an all-star lineup. The Moskva is the flagship of Russia's Black Sea Fleet and Marshal Ustinov is the flagship of the Russian Northern Fleet. Varyag is the flagship of the Russian Pacific Fleet. 2 Slava-Class ships are patrolling the Mediterranean to annoy NATO. On February 22, Marshal Ustinov was near the south of Italy in the Mediterranean while Varyag was operating near the Tartus base off Syria. Marshal Ustinov and the Varyag could have been given orders to sail up through the Aegean Sea to get closer to the Black Sea, but both ships, in order to send a message to NATO, have been patrolling while the Italians and French sail carrier battle groups in the Mediterranean. Slava-Class has powerful armaments. The Slava-Class guided missile cruisers displace about 11,500 tons and can steam at a top speed of 32 knots with 4 M8KF gas turbines turning 2 shafts. They were designed to be smaller and less expensive than the Kirov-class battlecruiser. All 3 Slava-Class ships were completed in the 1980s. They are armed with 16 supersonic nuclear-capable SSN-12 sandbox anti-ship cruise missiles. These are considered to be carrier killers with a speed of Mach 2.5 and range of 300 miles. The ships may have been updated with the faster and bigger P-1000 Vulcan anti-ship missiles that have larger warheads than the sandbox cruise missiles. The Slava-Class is also equipped with air defense missiles, the naval version of the S-300, and is adept at anti-submarine warfare with 10 torpedo tubes on board. They have modern radar, sonar, and other sensors. The ships also have a close-in weapon system that is comprised of a 30 mm Gatling-style gun. Moskva could shell Odessa with its twin 130 mm AK-130 dual-purpose gun that can fire at least 10 rounds per minute at a range of more than 12 miles. 1 helicopter is used by each ship. The Slava-class vessels have around 500 sailors. Russian plans to take Odessa with naval support. The Russian Navy has already accomplished 1 amphibious landing on February 25 through the Sea of Azov with thousands of naval infantry coming ashore near Mariupol where they linked up with other Russian soldiers. Now the citizens of Odessa, Ukraine's third-largest city with a strategic port, are preparing for another short landing with 9 amphibious ships seen off the coast. Women and children have evacuated to Moldova while many others stay indoors. Volunteers are standing on rooftops to act as watchmen for early warning against a Russian amphibious attack. Others are manning food banks and helping Odessa citizens stock up on supplies in preparation for a siege. Many are helping stack sandbags around key buildings and along the shoreline. But these efforts will not stop the Russian Navy should it choose to attack Odessa from the Black Sea. The Moskva battlecruiser will likely support an amphibious landing with gunfire as Russian naval infantry hit the beaches and coordinate with Russian troops north of Odessa to surround the coastal city. The Russian Ministry of Defense has confirmed that 6 amphibious warfare ships that left the Baltic Sea this week are heading to the Mediterranean Sea, where they say these vessels will take part in naval exercises. From the Mediterranean, this amphibious flotilla could potentially swing north into the Black Sea. There has already been significant discussion among experts and observers about whether this might be the actual final destination of these ships, which would put them in a position to support a possible new large-scale Russian intervention into Ukraine. 3 Project 775 Ropucha-class amphibious warfare ships from the Russian Navy's Baltic Fleet were spotted leaving the region on Monday. 2 more Ropuchas and a Project 11711 Ivan Gren-class landing ship, all from the service's Northern Fleet, followed after them the next day. The first 3 began transiting south through the English Channel on Wednesday, while the second trio reportedly just began moving toward the North Sea after being delayed by bad weather. Before yesterday, there had been no official word on where they were headed. This new official announcement about the plans for these amphibious warfare vessels came in a press release yesterday regarding an unrelated Russian naval exercise with Chinese and Iranian forces in the Gulf of Oman, which is set to wrap up tomorrow. The Slava-Class cruiser Varyag, Udaloy-class destroyer Admiral Tributs, and the fleet oiler Boris Butoma, all from the Russian Navy's Pacific Fleet, are presently taking part in those drills, but will join the amphibious ships in the Mediterranean afterward, according to the press release. Varyag is the flagship of Russia's Pacific Fleet. Separately, a Russian Navy Vishnya-class intelligence-gathering ship, the Vasily Tatishchev, was spotted passing through the Strait of Gibraltar into the Mediterranean yesterday. Where that vessel is headed is unclear, but it is certainly plausible that its appearance is related in some way to these other Russian naval movements. Russia has said that the forthcoming naval drills in the Mediterranean will be part of a large series of maritime exercises around the world, including in the North Atlantic and Pacific regions, which will involve approximately 140 ships and 60 aircraft, in total. The drills are intended to practice Navy and Air Force action to protect Russian national interests in the world's oceans and to counter military threats to the Russian Federation, another Russian Ministry of Defense press release said. The language the Russian Ministry of Defense used to describe these naval drills is similar in many respects to how the Kremlin has described the nature of large-scale exercises in Belarus that are scheduled to start next month. The massive deployments of troops and materiel, including Iskander short-range ballistic missiles and combat aircraft, associated with those drills have drawn concern from officials in Ukraine, as well as the United States and elsewhere. The fear is that this is all just a cover to get these forces into position for an impending new invasion of Ukraine. What concerns us is the total picture, right? Russia, is the amassing of 100,000 troops along Ukraine's borders combined with moving forces into Belarus over the weekend. It is. These numbers are beyond, of course, what we would expect with regard to a normal exercise, right? A senior U.S. State Department official told reporters during a background briefing earlier this week in reference to the forces massing in Belarus. A normal exercise requires notification 42 days in advance if you're talking about 9,000 troops, right? Normal, and 13,000 requires international observers. That's what normal looks like. What this is something entirely different. Ukrainian and U.S. officials have assessed for weeks now at least that any new major Russian military intervention into Ukraine is likely to be a multi-pronged operation that includes amphibious landings along the country's southern coastlines, especially in the Sea of Azov just to the north of the Black Sea. Having 6 additional large landing ships, able to carry mixtures of tanks and other armored vehicles, troops, and equipment, in the region would be extremely useful for supporting those operations. It's unclear whether or not they're bringing additional personnel and materiel from the Baltic with them now. The Varyag, Admiral Tributs, Vasily Tatishchev, could help further bolster the Russian Navy's capabilities, adding to the warships and submarines that are already assigned to its Black Sea Fleet. It is important to note that there is still no firm evidence that the amphibious warfare ships heading toward the Mediterranean, or any other Russian naval vessels that are also on their way or are in the region now, will ultimately end up in the Black Sea. At the same time, the Russians have made such deployments during periods of heightened tensions in the past. Last April, when there were also fears that the Kremlin might be about to launch a new invasion of Ukraine, the country's navy also sent a number of vessels, including Ropucha-class landing ships, to the region ostensibly for exercises. Actual exercises in the Mediterranean, especially in the eastern part of the sea, could draw the attention of Russia's opponents and distract them from preparations to invade Ukraine, too. It's unlikely that Russia would attempt to use these ships to try to block access in and out of the Black Sea, which would almost certainly provoke a major international incident, but other countries would have to factor in the presence of its naval vessels, and the potential risks they might pose, into their own planning processes. The U.S. military and others will certainly keep close tabs on these Russian naval movements as they move into the Mediterranean on their way to whatever their final destination might be. The U.S. Navy's Nimitz-class carrier USS Harry S. Truman and its associated strike group are currently in the region, as well, specifically to help reassure allies and partners amid this latest geopolitical friction with Russia. Earlier this week, the Navy also made the unusual decision to publicize the presence of the Ohio-class guided missile submarine USS Georgia in the eastern Mediterranean. The service has in the past disclosed the use of these submarines, specifically, to keep tabs on Russian activity in the region. There are only 4 Ohio-class guided missile submarines, or SSGNs, in service, and they are highly specialized platforms with extensive intelligence-gathering capabilities, as well as being able to carry as many as 154 Tomahawk cruise missiles, among other capabilities, that you can read more about here. The U.S. Air Force and Army have already been carrying out aerial ISR missions in the Black Sea region, as well as over Ukraine proper and along Belarus' western borders, on a near-daily basis for weeks. There is also the potential that if any large number of Russian ships do eventually move into the Black Sea, they might find it more congested than normal. Spain, a NATO member, announced yesterday that it would send a destroyer and minesweeper to the region specifically in response to the situation in and around Ukraine. That country's air force might also deploy fighter jets to Bulgaria. This follows the announcement this week of new Danish naval and air deployments to the Baltic Sea region. Other members of the alliance are considering their own military deployments to the Black Sea and Baltic Sea regions, as well. There is, of course, no indication that NATO, or any of its individual members, are planning to deploy forces to Ukraine to fight against any new Russian incursion, or that these countries have any other plans to engage Russia directly on a military level. The clear hope is that these kinds of deployments will contribute to a larger set of deterrents to dissuade Russia from launching a new military operation in Ukraine. The Kremlin regularly criticizes these kinds of deployments as threatening its interests. Just today, Russia's foreign ministry reiterated a demand for all foreign NATO troops to leave Bulgaria, as well as Romania, among other member states that joined the alliance after 1997. Whatever Russia does or doesn't decide to do very much remains to be seen. However, these naval deployments to the Mediterranean, and potentially into the Black Sea, only add to the mountain of worrisome signs that the Kremlin might be right about to kick off a new invasion of Ukraine.